And we're back in the Ardennes for the big race of the season here, the 86th running of round 4 of the World Cup, the Liege Bastogne Liege. 10 climbs of note in the Ardennes, a massive distance of 264 kilometres, and this the oldest classic in the world. And we are joining the race now after an attack on the Côte de Saint-Roch, where riders have got clear, including Andrea Taffy and the American Bobby Julich. And as always, I'm Phil Liggett, joined by Paul Sherwen. As we look here at the route, Paul, it's fairly leisurely down to Bastogne where it turns. All the hills, largely with the exception of one or two, are on the way back.
They certainly are. That's when the real tough part of Liege Bastogne Liege really happens. That's when all the major decisions in this bike race happen, and I have to feel that one of the most important is the Côte de la Redoute, around about 26 kilometres to go to the finish. But the recent addition, Phil, of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas at the end really is a sting in the tail of this race.
Well, the gap is 2:20 at the moment. As we look down there on Udo Boltz, the World Cup being led by a very defined Erik Zabel this year, having a wonderful season, and looking as though he might well be stitching that World Cup up before we take the usual break after the Amstel Gold Race and make way for the big tours, Italy and France in particular.
Well, Erik Zabel's certainly been a dominant rider this season as well, because he is a man capable of being competitive all throughout the season. He's not riding here Liege Bastogne Liege, but certainly he's a man I think will be looking to try and win the World Cup overall. And there you can see his lead, Phil, is unbelievable. 190 points ahead of Johan Muser with 111 and André Schmeel, the winner of the Tour of Flanders, with 110 points.
And all four riders really we don't think as men who will ride well in this particular race, but we'll see, because Zabel is in there again today. Still the bleak landscape here, a little bit of industry spread around the area in Liege Bastogne Liege, but also the countryside here is absolutely stunning. The climbs are long and they hurt, believe me. As we watch here now the Farm Frites riders digging in just that little bit. This is Andreas Kleer, the German member of Farm Frites, onto the Côte de Stocco now, and this often a springboard for somebody.
This is also a very difficult climb. In the area around Stocco, we have 3 different climbs. Once you go through the town of Stavelot, you take in the Côte de Stocco, then the Côte de Wanneval before heading back into Trois Points, and then heading up towards Côte de Rosier, and that's when the race really begins.
Our old friend, and that's what he's becoming this year, he's always in the breakaways, Matt White in this move as well. We just caught a glimpse of him sitting there behind this man in the white jersey, peeping in, Udo Boltz. And if you look to the front there, the green shorts are being worn, the new colours this year for Bobby Julich, and let's hope that he rides a good race. Certainly he's been the inspiration of this breakaway.
Andreas Kleer, the rider from Farm Frites, a very good rider, rode exceptionally well in the early season classics, Gent-Wevelgem, and here, surprising to see him riding to the front of Liege Bastogne Liege. But what a great ride there, as you said, Phil, by Matty White. He certainly will be on much more of a defensive role, looking after the position of his team leader, Francesco Casagrande. Casagrande, the winner just a couple of days ago of the Flèche Wallonne, and I'm really amazed to see the performance of Matty White here, because he was never one of the top riders with the Australian Institute for Sport, but he was certainly one of the riders willing to give more work than anybody else.
But you know, that does happen time and time again. Riders who have not been at the very, very top of the sport as an amateur, when they turn professional, it becomes their vocation, and they do improve. And very often the talented rider who turns pro doesn't make it, and the lesser talented rider does.
A lot of riders from Mapei moving to the front here to try and control the head of affairs, and also Lampre moving forward as well. They obviously feel today that Oscar Kamenzinder's got a very good chance of being a top performer in this bike race.
Well, chance to close down a little bit on this climb. You see how steep they are, short and sharp at 22%, and it's cobbled as well. It really is a lovely area around here, but for the bike racers it's a very difficult terrain. They also have a Liege Bastogne Liege tourist ride. It starts at Tilf, and I've ridden that, and that is just over 200 kilometres, an absolutely wonderful ride around most of the climbs that this race goes over, including La Redoute.
Well, it's good to see Bobby Julich on the front of this group here, Phil, in such good form in the early part of the season. Because Bobby Julich really has had a very up and down career since he moved across from the Motorola squad and went to Cofidis, and then he was really followed by an awful lot of bad luck with crashes in the Tour de France, crashes in the Tour of Spain. And let's hope that this year, now that he's switched across to Crédit Agricole, that all of that bad luck will have been put behind him, and we'll see him climbing up to the kind of form that took him to third place overall in the Tour de France a couple of years ago.
Well, we often think of Bobby Julich as being a new professional, but in fact he turned pro back in '92, so this will make it now, his 9th season as a pro starting, and he has done some wonderful performances, not least, of course, that brilliant 3rd place in the Tour de France, but last year out in the time trial in the Tour de France, breaking bones when he had a crash on a bend and leaving the way clear for Lance Armstrong to become top American.
Well, on the front of the group there, Oscar Kamensin wearing 111, and very close to him there you can see Zbigniew Spruk as well. Surprising to see him riding so close to the front. This man is more suited to races like Paris-Roubaix and the Tour of Flanders, but today he too is looking to try and get himself some points because he's fairly high up in the overall rankings of the World Cup, and if he can get points today, well, that will enclose him in on the overall leader Eric Zabel and the other 3 men at the top. That's Peter van Pietegem, André Schmil and Johan Museu.
Well, this is Andres Clear here, and if they don't need reminding, I'll remind us that we are on the way back from Bastogne now. By tradition, the television cameras don't cover the stretch going down to Bastogne because most of the climbs are on the way back, but once they turn at the bottom end, they have a feeding station at Savy, and then they start the long journey back up through Houffalize, which, by the way, is where they have a World Cup mountain bike race, and then they go over these coats, these small climbs on the way through. There's the complete composition of this breakaway, and the big man that is good to be here, Bobby Julich, showing us now that the legs are coming into form at the right time. This would be one of his targets, Liege Bastogne Liege. He's not the man for Paris-Roubaix or the Tour de Flanders, but we're moving into Bobby's period now as we go into the short stage races and then, of course, the Grand Tour itself.
And one of the most dangerous riders in this leading group, though, Phil, is Udo Bolts. Bolts is a very good one-day rider. He gets really overshadowed by his team leaders, but when given the responsibility to lead the team, he always comes up with great performances. He's currently wearing the white jersey there of Telekom as the champion of Germany.
Well, this breakaway getting away once we're on the climb of the San Roque on the way down there. It was the attacks that come. Taffy, I don't think, is in this group any longer. He's been split off and gone back. It was a group of 16. As you can see, we've cut it in half. Taffy was among the riders who went back to the peloton. And Julich deciding to keep going with a strongman like Bolts in there. A willing workhorse of Matt White. Andreas Clear will also work very hard for Farmfleets. This has every bit of hope here. But there's a lot of selection to come, of course, because we've still got the big climbs of this race. They come near the end. On to the next one, the Côte de Wanneranval. And this just takes us up to 150 metres above sea level. But again, short, sharp, and perhaps not so sweet.
Well, this is the highest part of Belgium in this area around here. And in fact, on the ride out from Liège down to Bastogne, the riders go over a climb called the Barak Freteur, which in fact is the highest point of Belgium. And if they do have exceptionally bad winters, then you can actually come down here, and it's a very nice area for cross-country skiing. Bobby Julich on the front, on the far side there, 221 in the Crédit Agricole strip, looking very comfortable on these climbs, and it looks as if he has really built on his early season form, which brought in some pretty impressive performances from him, Phil, in races like the Tour of the Mediterranean.
Well, they're pushing the lead here, although Clear looks as though he's struggling a little bit. Oh, indeed he is. He's being tailed here on this climb. The gap is still in the ascension for these riders, heading up towards 3 minutes now. And this breakaway looking very, very solid. Luca Manzatti, Marcelino, Garcia, Alonso, Grisha Nierman in this breakaway. And that's Bolts on the front, anxious to keep it going here. Can expect a lot of work from Bobby Julich. I think they're the two boys with the big reputation up here. There's how far we are to go now. Shade under 90 kilometres from the finish. And the feared climb of La Redoute still some kilometres ahead.
Absolutely, that's when the bike race really hots up, and the main field behind with all of the contenders in it like Laurent Jalabert will be certainly looking to force their move over the top of the Côte de la Redoute. That's basically where last year Frank Vandenbroek came to the front and showed us just how strong he was, but Bolts is in very good condition today. Look at that, the acceleration from Bolts there was forcing the response to come from Bobby Julich in the green and white there. Julich moving up into second position, and it's because of the pressure on these climbs at the moment that poor old Andreas Clear has been left out of the back, and he shortly will find himself back in the main field, because in this part of Liège Bastogne Liège now, once you get dropped on a climb, then there's no chance of coming back.
7 men left from the original 16. The red jersey there of Kurt van der Wouwe. The Belgian on the Lotto team, another man that seems to enjoy big-time stage racing these days. Matt White tagged on to the back and riding pretty steadily.
Well, Matty White really is a great asset. We're at the part of the climb at the moment which is 15%. These climbs here in the Wallonie are a lot longer than the Flemish climbs, but in the main field already one or two riders getting a bit frisky and feeling that they've got the advantage of actually jumping off the front at the moment.
Well, talking of jumping off the front, Paul, I'm not too sure where these two are. There they are, they're just coming off the front of the peloton. Hanging out, offering a carrot to anybody that wants to come and join them here, but the peloton has got this race nicely under control just now. The time gap is just on 3 minutes to the leaders, and they've gone over the top of the next climb, and these riders are on it.
Well, the main field won't be too worried at the moment about the advantage of Bobby Julich and Udo Bolt up at the front of the race, because they know that they will pick up the pace as we get closer to the more repetitive climbs towards the end, the Côte de la Redoute, the Côte de Saint-Ilmont. And it is a very difficult run in Liege Bastogne Liege these days. In fact, we finish outside the city of Liege, just up above on one of the hills in the small town of Ons. And that final climb of the day, Phil, that the organisation put in about 3 years ago, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, well, it really is a sting in the tail.
Nice little tempo here, nobody out to commit suicide, just keep the race going nice and steady. No decision yet made as to the destiny of this breakaway, but just find out and see how the peloton reacts. That's all they can hope for here. Julich and Boats are doing more than their fair share in the pacemaking. I think they'll have to do that, as the others have different commitments. Certainly Matt White is not going to contribute in a breakaway that might carry somebody like Julich to victory.
Absolutely, Matty White will get instructions from the team management behind to just take a back seat in this breakaway situation. In fact, we can see that Marcelino Garcia, the Once rider at the back, he too is starting to do that, Phil, because he as well has responsibilities to Laurent Jalabert, and they wouldn't want to drag this group too far off the front with men like Udo Bolt and Bobby Julich in it. But you can see this climb here, the Côte de Wanner-en-Val, is a very difficult climb. These climbs in the Wallonie much longer than the short explosive climbs that we see in races like the Tour of Flanders.
At least they're going over the top here. Wonderful crowd. The day very, very pleasant indeed. Years gone by, we've seen snow hit this one just like it has hit Flèche Wallonne and turn this course into a nightmare. And Eddie, when Bernard Hinault won it a few years back now, Hinault finished in a snowstorm and he was so far ahead he could have got showered and changed before the next rider came in. That was back in 1980.
On that occasion, Phil, if I remember correctly, Hinault won the bike race by over 10 minutes.
That's right.
And less than 15 riders finished on that stage. And I actually, I rode that bike race, but I never actually got down to Bastogne.
Oh, you do let me down sometimes, Paul.
Well, it was pretty horrendous weather, I tell you. It was unbelievable. But Hinault, what a remarkable performance by him on that day. I remember seeing pictures of him in the last few kilometres. He was wearing short sleeves in the snow, and his gloves were so big that they came halfway up his arms.
Le grand patron.
Certainly was a tough bike rider, and he really blew that race to pieces. Bobby Julich's got his hand up there. I don't think there's any problem with him. We've gone over the summit of the climb of Wanner-en-Val, and what he'll be looking for now is to have a quick word with Roger Liege at the back there to keep himself topped up, probably with some drinks.
I actually think the riders are shouting Udo there as if to slow him down so they could come back together as the lead's gone over 3 minutes.
Probably. In fact, you can see the gap has gone up again there. It was 2 minutes 24 seconds, but it's gone to over 3 minutes, and that is rather important because I would have expected at this part of the race now for the fields to be picking up its pace on these climbs and pulling themselves closer and closer to that leading group. Now there's a move down here by one of the Mappe riders trying to go off the front, and you can see, Phil, it still is a very large main field here at Liege Bastogne Liege.
A bit of an attack coming again now by the Mappe boys because they're lacking a man up there, and why they're lacking a man up there, there's going to be plenty of moves coming their way.
Leading them over the summit. It's interesting to note that in fact Johan Museo is on the starting line this morning. The Mappe have put together a pretty impressive team here, Phil, with Paolo Bettini, Giuliano Figueras and Axel Merckx, fresh from that performance in Flèche Wallonne. It was such a sad performance there, really. I was just hoping Axel would hang on to get third place because he's such a courageous bike rider.
Well, respite from the climb for the moment at least, as they now flip over the top of the climb. Continue on. The next one will be the Côte de Rosier, but it's still a little way away. We've got to descend down to the lovely town of Trois Ponts, the Three Bridges, and then A little bit of a ride along the bottom road there before we get onto the Côte du Rosier.
Well, Udo Bolts is all the time, Phil, going to the front, keeping the pressure on the climbs. He's obviously in fantastic condition and has found himself in this early morning breakaway, which is not necessarily a good thing, because more often than not in Liege Bastogne Liege there is an early morning breakaway that goes out very soon after the start on the race down from Liege to Bastogne, and that group nearly always gets picked up on the way back up to the finish line in Os, because when we do get to the latter part of the race, the Côte de l'Orsay and the Côte de la Redoute, we will see a general acceleration in the main field, and an advantage of 3 or 4 minutes can easily be wiped away.
Grady Neerman is the man in the group there for Rabobank, and this looks like we've got a little bit of a breakaway trying to get clear of the field now, containing André Schmil.
There's Cedric Vasseur, the new signing for the US Postal Service. I think US Postal have made a very good move signing this young man, because he's a Frenchman but he speaks absolutely perfect English, and he's a man who certainly will be a great asset for Lance Armstrong later on in the season when Armstrong comes back and tries to win the Tour de France for a second time. Vasseur himself from a very long cycling family, because his father as well was a very good bike rider. His father won a stage in the Tour de France, but his son, in fact, Cedric, went one further and managed to get the yellow jersey and held on to it until a certain man by the name of Jan Ulrich took it off him.
André Schmil looking a little bit in disguise with those glasses on. And wearing number 2, we caught a glimpse of the Mappe man in the break there, in the chase group rather, Paolo Bettini. There's the gap. It's come down because of this reaction now by the chase group at 2 minutes 10 seconds. We're onto the Côte du Rosier. This is a very difficult climb, this, because look at the length of it, almost 5 kilometres here. Here is without doubt the strong man of the breakaway, Udo Bolts. He's hard to keep under control, but they are trying to keep him under control because it's so far to go, and there's no point in breaking this group up right now.
Well, the only chance this group has got of surviving is actually keeping together in numbers and just working together on the flatter parts of the course. It's a good idea to send Udo Bolts to the front on the climbs to set the tempo. And Matty White, I've got a face on him. He said, "What am I doing here again?"
He has been in every break of every major classic this year, Matt White. He has ridden such a great series, and his team must be absolutely delighted with the way he's ridden this year. He must be, apart from their team leader like Casagrande, their best man this year. That's as far as grabbing television time goes, certainly.
The main field, still a very big main field at the moment, and still no reaction at all, Phil, coming from them in the pursuit of those 7 riders up the road. And it looks now as if the Rabobank rider Neerman at the back here is having a bit of a hard time. It's really becoming a question of elimination from the rear of this group at the front.
Well, Grady Neerman here, he's down on the start sheet today as a Dutchman, but he's very much a German, and it's nice to see him get on a big team like Rabobank this year. But his ambitions exceeded his strength today. I think he really has just hit the wall big time. All of a sudden those legs went on the Côte du Rosier. Nothing to be ashamed of in that at this time of the year. He's had a very good race today. Clearly felt good enough to look for the move. And remember, there were 16 riders in this group. We are now down to just 6.
Let's not forget that when you've got men like Udo Bolts and Bobby Julich setting the tempo on the front on these climbs, you can be certain that if you're not a good climber, your eggs are really going to cry out. And I think that is why Neerman has been put into difficulty, because there is still quite a lot of pressure on the front on these climbs, Phil, as we do see riders like Bolts and Bobby Julich insistently coming to the front, trying to keep as much of their advantage as possible. Whereas in the main field, it's still tempo sempre piano for the moment, not riding very hard. But look at this. This is the palmarès of the Liege Bastogne Liege with number 1 man, Eddy Merckx.
Yes, 5 times, so Axel has a lot on his plate today, doesn't he? But Moreno Argentin, the Italian who was known as the man of the Ardennes, he won the Flèche Wallonne 3 times and he won this 4 times. And that is a tremendous record for the Italian Moreno Argentin.
This is Mazzanti, the Italian rider on the Fassa Bortolo team. They have been a very aggressive team so far this season as well, Phil. It's a new team which is put together by the former mentor of Moreno Argentin, Giancarlo Ferretti. He looked after the Ariostia squad, then he looked after the MG squad. He's a master tactician, and he's put together this very new team this year. And for the moment, they really haven't come up with any huge wins, but they're always present in the breakaways.
It looks as though Neerman on that caption has been picked up by Andrea Taffi and Pedro Arillo. We might see them very shortly, because they're now caught in no man's land. Taffi again trying to come forward, having been up here and gone back to the main field, as we're down to these few men left at the front now, 6 of them. Kurt van der Wouwer having a little drink, and the Lotto boys doing their best to keep him away too, because they've got a few men on the front to try and form a distraction. There goes Bobby Julich gritting his teeth. There's the strongman Udo Boltz, champion of Germany. Marcelino Garcia Alonso is the Once boy, and this man can't get enough of it, Matt White.
Well, I remember watching a bike race in Australia, the Commonwealth Bank Cycle Classic, and if it hadn't been for this man, a young man by the name of Nick Gates certainly would never have won that bike race. He almost shouted him up the final climb where they could attack, and he really dragged him to the finish. And I really think if it hadn't been for Matty White on that occasion, Nick Gates certainly would never have won that great bike race in Australia. But look at this now, Phil. Andrea Taffy is making an incredible comeback. He's just 20 seconds off this lead group again.
Well, he's an incredible bike rider, Taffy, and he had a great Paris-Roubaix, not as good as he wanted, of course, because he was forced onto the defensive when Johan Museo got on the attack. But even so, he was on form for that, continuing it now. Mappe without their man, Michele Bartoli, still hoping to get himself back onto top form. As we look at the leaders here, coursing their way through the beautiful wooded scenery of the Ardennes in Belgium. How different this is, Paul, to Flanders. It's the same country, yet the people occasionally can't even speak to one another, because it's French and Flemish.
Absolutely, it's very strange in this part of the world. The majority of the French-speaking Walloons here do not speak Flemish at all, whereas if you go across to the Flanders, most of the Flandrian people actually do speak both languages. In fact, most of them speak 3 languages, because they nearly all speak English as well. In fact, they prefer to speak English rather than speaking the French language, and there is still a lot of animosity in Belgium between the two different speaking countries. And in fact, they have a border which is known as the linguistic border. On one side you speak Flemish, and on the other side you speak French.
Well, when I used to live in Belgium, the cyclist on the team I rode, we used to race in the Walloon area, and he couldn't speak a word of French. I always was amused at 2 Belgian people trying to correspond with sign language.
Quite amazing. These riders now, Phil, certainly I think are going to be pulled into the fold, because in the main field they will certainly start to accelerate once we get towards the Côte de la Redoute. But I think we must be pretty happy today, because I've seen Liege Bastogne Liege on so many occasions with snow coming down across the road. Unfortunately, the weather has remained fairly clement. I mean, it's normal for this time of the year for temperatures to be 15, 16 degrees Celsius, and at the moment it has been that for most of the day, and we haven't had a drop of wind really to split the race over the top of these climbs.
Well, in fairness, Paul, this has not been a slow race at all. The average to the top of the Côte de Rosier, which is now behind us, was 41 kilometres an hour. That's nearly 26 miles an hour, and when you know the climbs here and the way they casually usually drift down from Liège towards the turn at Bastogne, that was a very rapid start to the day.
It very often is, because it's a very good road on the way down from Liège down to Bastogne. It's nearly all done on the main road, not really taking in any of the major climbs. The first big climb is that one at Houffalize over the Côte de Saint-Roch, and then the turnaround in Bastogne. So they have got a chance to hammer it down at 40-45 kilometres an hour. And this is the group now, and it looks very much, in fact, and that's rather interesting to see that Taffy has made it back to this front group, Phil, because there he is in second position there. So he certainly has recovered very well from getting shelled out over the climb of Stockeur.
Last year's winner, by the way, Frankie van den Broeke, is not in the race for Cofidis, and the arguments and the ill feeling between team and rider seem to continue to exist with that man. He changed his mind by the day. You never know when he's going to turn up. He is an enigma in the sport, but he is such a talent.
Well, it's pretty amazing. He decided during the classic season that he wanted to go and train at altitude in California, and he went to the airport, and it turns out that he'd booked himself onto a small plane to take him to Brussels airport, and he couldn't catch his connection because they realised when he got to the airport that his plane couldn't carry his bike.
Well, that would be about right for Frankie.
It's been a very difficult season, though, for the Cofidis squad, and there's been so much animosity between the two of them that I really can't see what the solution is going to be. I would think that eventually Van den Broeke is going to have to leave Cofidis and go somewhere else, because he's such a strong character. He is a very talented bike rider, and he doesn't seem to want to bend to any form of discipline at all. And sometimes in a team you need to have a certain amount of discipline, at least a certain amount of respect for the rules.
Well, perhaps the only team that could cope with him would be Fassa Bortolo, and then Mr. Ferretti would sort him out.
He certainly would. I tell you what, there'd be no messing around with Giancarlo. He's a very tough manager, and most of the bike riders around the sport of international cycling, they really want to do at least 1 or 2 years with Ferretti, because he's such a great man to learn from, and he is an incredible tactician on board the car at the finishes.
Well, Taffy's up here, as you can see on the caption. And this guy is a remarkable bike rider. Bobby Julich will welcome his presence because he's always willing to put weight behind those pedals. There's still a good distance to go. There he is, Andrea Taffy, latched onto the back. So he's up here 1 minute, gone back, and now he's back again.
He really is. He's a great bike rider. You really have to enjoy watching a man like Andrea Taffy race, because he will attack and attack and attack until he eventually breaks the string. Watching him win Paris-Roubaix last year was magnificent. I actually thought, Phil, that he'd attacked so many times he was never going to get off the front, but he just kept hitting them time after time, and I think at the end of the day they just said, oh well, carry on with it.
Well, the first 5 hours of racing today, they've gone through more than 200 kilometres of riding, and we've got 52 left to go now of the original 264. And Taffy from Mappe has latched on the back to the main field, which is not that far behind even now, being led as usual by the big boys from Lampre. Looks like Ballerini on the front here.
We're now actually on the Côte de l'Orsay, and after that they will certainly pick up pretty rapidly, Phil, because we will go through then to the Côte de la Redoute. Franco Ballerini, surprising to see him riding this classic here, because certainly this is not his kind of terrain, but he's decided to come here today to work for the rest of the team, to work for Oscar Kamenzind, a former world champion from Switzerland, a former Swiss national champion as well, feels that he has a chance of coming away with a victory in this great race, the Doyenne they call it, because it is the oldest of all of the classics.
1892 when this race began, and it survived the passage of time, and we're still holding it now in the year 2000. Long may it stay.
Well, I tell you what, the advantage of the leading group, Phil, cannot be that much now, because we're both on the same climb. This is the leading group, which is around about 8 riders now since Taffy has come up to join it. We're on the flat section on the top of the Côte de l'Orsay, and just a little bit further back we saw the main field now being led by the Lampre squad and Franco Ballerini. So it may well be that this all comes together before we actually get down into the town for the ascent of the Côte de la Redoute.
There's the face of Udo Boltz very briefly, looking as though he's struggling a little bit now. Heading down towards that big climb. We're over the top of the L'Orsay here. Then we'll drop down to the town of Rémuchon, do a little left and a right, and then we're on the climb of La Redoute, and then we'll see the strength of riders. I know that some of the riders like David Miller, who is now retired from this race today for Cofidis, he did only 100 kilometres or so. He went training on the course the other day and tried to emulate Frank Vandenbroek, who last year climbed La Redoute, Paul, on his big chain ring, and it was impossible for any member of the Cofidis team to do it on their big chain ring, and they couldn't believe how Frank had done it, and I think it just completely disillusioned them.
I think they really got blown away by that fact. But it's completely different, Phil, trying to do something like that actually in racing and in training as well. You don't have the same mentality, you don't have the same build-up and the same psychological preparation as you do for one of the big classics. And it was amazing that Vandenbroek did ride the majority of that climb on the big ring. As we can see now, the leading group certainly will know that the main field is starting to close in on them, with men at the front like Franco Ballerini, Marco Serpellini from the Lampre squad starting to pick up the pace quite a lot as we get down now onto the long straight roads which are going to take us down into the town for the start of the Côte de la Redoute.
Well, there's 7 of them still there. The extra support coming up from the rear from Andrea Taffy, who passed Pedro Rio, and also Niemann, who went back into the pack. Quite clearly, Lampre are trying to get this race in touch with things before we get to the climb of La Redoute.
Looks like
Taffy, yeah.
He's taken a flyer. What a man. This is not his kind of terrain, really, although he has come up with a victory at the Tour of Lombardy at the end of a season a couple of years ago. And certainly I wouldn't have expected him to see him at the front in this bike race, having been competitive in the Tour of Flanders and Paris-Roubaix. But that's a typical Andrea Taffy move.
I'm just wondering why, though, Paul. It's such a long way to go, nearly 50 kilometres. Why try to go it alone? But there you are. He's on his own and he's gone. No reaction. Kurt van der Wouwer flicks his arms, indicates let's go in turns, guys. And Julich goes through, followed by Udo Boltz. The gap is about 1 minute and 15 seconds at this point over the field.
Well, the only reason that Andrea Taffy could have attacked like that, Phil, is because he's not happy with the way the group was working together. They were obviously starting to take softer turns at the front. As a lot of riders in that group now are trying to recuperate a little bit as we go there past the Chateau of Arzay and try and rest before we get to this climb of La Redoute. And Taffy doesn't want any of that. He wants to survive off the front of the group before La Redoute, which is why he's taken off alone like this.
Well, we'll see what he can do. He's coursing his way down towards the big climb. It starts almost immediately you leave the town of Remouchon, and it kicks up very fiercely, very quickly.
It's a great bike rider to watch, though. I love to see an aggressive bike rider in races like this, Liege Bastogne Liege. He doesn't worry about the tactics. He doesn't really worry about what's going on behind. He just wants to do something with great panache, and he may well do that here because he's leapt away from that group. He's on the flattest part of the course now. We can only be about 5 kilometres away from the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute, and he, for the moment, is going to be the first man to get there.
His team captain, Michela Bartoli, not here, but he won 2 of the last 3 editions of Liege Bastogne Liege. Mappe just have so much success.
And again, coming up with the goods and taking out Paris-Roubaix, which is a race that basically seems to be theirs nowadays. 12 seconds is Taffy's advantage over Bobby Julich, and a further 1 minute and 36 seconds back to the main field. But you can see now, Phil, that the Lampre squad at the front are dedicated to pulling this race all back together for the bottom of the Côte de la Redoute. Right on the front is Franco Ballerini, getting a lot of help as well. In there is Marco Serpellini. Gabriele Misaglia as well, the small rider, the little climber on the Lampre squad, is also riding very close to the front. But all of this is to set up operations for Oscar Kamenzind.
Nice little shot there, the leader in the top corner, the main peloton with Lampre charging them down. Those huge thighs of Andrea's driving on. Andrea came over to Britain this winter to attend a cycling club dinner in support of the Dave Rayner Memorial Fund. Dave was a professional cyclist who was virtually mugged and died from it when he was in a nightclub in near where he lives in Sheffield. And the fund Andrea was charging £5, that's about $7.50 for his signature, and they were queuing up, and all the money he gave to the fund, and he wants to come back and do it again next year. He was so popular with the whole of the people at the dinner. He really is a good guy.
And he also had a lot of really nice things to say about Dave Rayner at that dinner as well, and his piece of advice to a lot of English riders going abroad and even to American riders going abroad is please try and go abroad with that mentality to racing that David Rayner had, to go out there and race hard but enjoy yourself and keep a smile on your face.
Well, he hasn't got a smile on his face right now. 43 kilometres to go. He's decided to make a day of it now because he's heading towards La Redoute, and once over La Redoute he's got the Côte de Sprimont and the Côte de Sartilmont and then the Côte de Saint-Nicolas before the finish, and that's a nasty end now to the Liege Bastogne Liege.
It certainly is. It's a real sting in the tail trying to drag your body over the Côte de Saint-Nicolas after 260 kilometres in the saddle. Different teams now, Phil, starting to come to the front. This is Pedro Horillo of the Vitaligo Seguros team. They've actually only got 6 riders on the starting line this morning, and he's about to get picked up by the main field. As you can see, the acceleration still on the front from the Lampre squad.
Yeah, Horillo, don't forget, he was with Taffy at one stage. Taffy was obviously going forward and Horillo going backwards. He was part of the breakaway. He's gone back in the pack, and the Lampre boys have just swallowed him up. It's still a very big bunch, this. Nobody helping Lampre, who are waiting till they get to the mountain, and then they are going to launch their men forth. That's the plan.
Interesting to see how Franco Ballerini handles the climb of Côte de la Redoute here, because this is a very big group coming down into the town for the start of the Côte de la Redoute, and I have to say that I reckon once we go over the top we'll only be looking at a group of around about 25 or 30 men. Andrea Taffy still leading the way, still leading the charge to the bottom of that climb, and he's hoping that he'll get there with a 15 or 20 second advantage, because actually when you hit the La Redoute, Phil, it is absolute chaos at the bottom, especially when you have a large group like this.
Away now, we're not far away from Remouchon. This puts us just about 4 kilometres away from the next town, and then we're straight up La Redoute.
Taffy throws his bottle off there, and now don't worry about that causing too much pollution, because that bottle will soon be snapped up and become a prized possession of some young supporter at the side of the road. That's the group of Bobby Julich in there with Udo Bolt, and they certainly weren't able to respond to the attack of Andrea Taffy at the front of the bike race. And that was a pretty silly move by them not to be attentive and wait for some form of attack, because they now are losing serious ground on Andrea Taffy, and they're about to get picked up by the main field behind.
These towns so different to the Flanders towns, that each have their own character and personality. There's Taffy here, Just passes through now. This has been a long sojourn for Andrea Taffy, but he loves this time of the year, April, coming over for the Spring Classics in Belgium and, of course, in France with his favourite, Paris-Roubaix. He should hang around for the Amstel Gold next week. There's talk, actually, the Amstel Gold race is going to change its dates and will come on the day of Liege Bastogne Liege, and Liege will go out to the Amstel Gold date. So that's something during the summer we may see announced.
Well, it's a very strange move, because I think that the way the classics are set up at the moment, I think they're in perfect order. Tour of Flanders before Roubaix, and then the break for this race, Liege Bastogne Liege. You know, the international cycling body should think a little bit about changing some of the events towards the end of the season, because I do feel nowadays that the World Championships is much too late in the year, and a lot of the big riders who we see riding in the middle of the season when you should be at the height of your performance, like the Tour de France, many of those riders don't even hang around and wait for the World Championships now. So it's a little bit of a surprise, but fortunately this year the world champion Oscar Freire is turning out to be quite a star rider, despite the fact that when he did cross the line, Phil, we didn't really know who he was.
Absolutely, we do now. 1 minute 10 back to Franco Ballerini and his boys in pink and blue. 20 seconds is the gap for Andrea over the guys he's left behind for the moment, as they continue on the attack here.
Sergio Barbaro in second position there, followed by Franco Ballerini, and now we're looking very much at Andrea Taffy well in the town now, and very shortly, Phil, he will be taking a right-hand turn, and he will be on the early slopes of the Côte de la Redoute, so he's done pretty well to stay off the front of this group.
Back into the department of Liège, which is where the Flèche Wallonne finishes, over at Huy. There's the boys who are left behind by Taffy now, but they're going to be out the saddle very shortly. 6 left there.
Well, they're pushing all the cars out there. The red car there is the car of the race referees, and the only one car remaining behind is the neutral service vehicle, the yellow Mavic vehicle there. 19% the Côte de la Redoute at its steepest part, and that's something you won't see anywhere else in the world. The motorway becoming a parking lot.
I know, it's unbelievable. There'd be a huge row if that was in Britain, I can tell you. But underneath goes the World Cup Round 4 Classic. He's on the climb now. And sensibly, Paul, he's not making a charge at it. He knows what this climb is like. It gets worse, and he's sort of keeping himself under control.
Well, this is Johan Museo right on the front now, so that's a surprise. He's obviously working for the little climber on the team, Paolo Bettini. And Mapei once again have put themselves into a very strong position controlling this bike race. There's Andrea Taffy, there's the neutral service car behind, and looking a little bit further back, there is the group of 6, but there's the main field right on their tails. They've
closed it right down, and then you see the kick now as the road starts to climb. This is as big a crowd as I've seen here for Liege Bastogne Liege. As cycle sport continues to remain as popular as ever here in Belgium, as now we can see the crowd barriered back, as Taffy now looks as though he's dropping back because they're calling away all cars around him. Otherwise they'll never get by the riders in a moment. The road just becomes too narrow.
Well, the referees really have to be on the ball when it comes to this part of the bike race, because it is such a narrow climb that you have to have a complete vacuum. As you see, there's only one motorbike in there, and he's going to come to grief pretty shortly if he doesn't get out of the way as well, because the main field now is right on the tail of the 6 chasers, and just a little bit further around the corner, Andrea Taffy is still surviving off the front of the group. The man on the front of the group there of the 6 chasers, in fact, is Udo Boltz, and Bobby Julich there in 3rd position. Julich shows his face quite a lot today, but I think certainly this long effort, he won't be a man to count towards the end when we really start to pick up the pace.
Well, he's trying to hang on in there. We're getting onto that very steep section now. It really is a toughie. There'll be riders using 24 and 25 rear sprockets on this climb. It is very, very steep, especially if you're having to be dictated to by the pace of the peloton. Here's Andrea Taffy. He's on the part that hurts most right now, and he's still hanging on. If he's in the lead over the top, he'll have company, I feel sure of that, but they could escape then.
Certainly the accelerations will come. Surprising to see that Udo Boltz is still surviving here. There is Marcelino Garcia, but there is the main field, the big onslaught of the Lampre riders, and there is the difference in the speed. Right up there is Oscar Kamenzind. He's the man wearing 111 for the Lampre Dakin squad, but still, the man at the front, Andrea Taffy, is surviving. But certainly, Phil, now we're going to see some attacks. And look out for Laurent Jalabert, because he said a couple of days ago he really wants to win Liege Bastogne Liege.
Well, he reckons he's the favourite, that's what they all say. He's the world number 1 and the most consistent bike rider, a rider who loves this event as well. A massive crowd. Oh dear me, now there's a fight started on the left amongst the crowd there. Look at that. So they've waited for hours to see the race go by, now they're having an argument.
Well, that's a shame. That guy fell backwards there and he was obviously pushed out of the way by an over-enthusiastic Belgian supporter. And now it's Rabobank taking over control on the front. They're here today to work for Michael Boga, the top man on their squad. And a lot of riders, you in fact start to see, Phil, that there is a general sorting out being done here. In about 6th position, I can see Axel Merckx is looking pretty good as well.
Look at the strength of that wind now as we come up towards the top of La Redoute. At least for the moment, it's in the right direction as they start to reform now, the strong men. But this is amazing, Paul, but we don't normally see such a group climb La Redoute. It's incredible, this.
Absolutely. Nobody yet has had the ability to accelerate over the top of this climb. It's basically been a major tempo riding, but it's over the last kilometre or so that we will see the general elimination. But you can see there is a split there. We have around about 20 riders moving off the front of the main field, which was extremely large at the bottom of this climb. And this is the second group on the road. Now, if they can't pick it up, they're going to have a hard time pulling themselves back into the bike race.
A rapid head count, and I've got 23 riders there in the split as they just come to the top. And, you know, once over the summit, it drags a little bit further. Then we swing to the right, and then it's top gear and go for it. And that elastic might stretch then.
Well, last year I would have said this was Michele Bartoli, but he's not here, so that must be Paolo Bettini, followed by Rebellin, the Liquigas rider, and there in 3rd place, Laurent Jalabert. So the attack has come, Phil. The big names of the bike race have decided once again to use the Côte de la Redoute as a launch pad, and you can see how difficult it is at the back of the pack here.
The crowd a bit stunned here to silence now as they see the rest of the race come through. They weren't seeing too many Belgians up front today as they've gone over the top now. Look as though Jalabert is dictating along with Bettini. They seem to be the strong men. As we get back up, there's David Rebellin driving on now as Jalabert, and tagged on to the back, it looks like it might be Casagrande.
That definitely is Francesco Casagrande, the winner a couple of days ago of the Flèche Wallonne. Now, wouldn't that be a great double? The last man to do that great double was Moreno Argentine, and it's a very difficult double to try and do. At the front of the bike race now, 4 serious leaders, but there's still, Phil, an awful long way to go to the finish line, and they don't really seem to have opened up that big of a gap over the rest of the main field. There's a Faso Bortolo rider getting onto the back of the group there as well.
Well, I think it's Dario Frigo who's coming on the back. Danilo Frigo, but we'll see when we get in there a bit tighter. There's 5 of them trying to get clear. We know 4 are big names in the cycle sport, and if they get clear, then it's goodbye to the rest of them. Casagrande now starting the accelerations, trailed by David Rebellin, followed by Paolo Bettini and Laurent Jalabert, and I think it's Frigo got on from the back.
But you see, Francesco Casagrande saw that they had the gap and has decided he's got some very strong bike riders with him, and although it is still an awful long way to go to the finish, we're looking at 34 kilometres to the finish from the top of the Côte de la Redoute. He's trying to encourage these riders because he reckons with these strong men they have got the chance to stay clear to the finish, and he is looking for the double. And Jalabert, in fact, is the man who seems to be in a little bit of difficulty because he didn't take up the pacemaking immediately. He had to be encouraged.
Well, he did complain that he was tired after the end of Flèche Wallonne, and that was why he didn't ride an aggressive race. Not bad, though, if you can finish 3rd when you're tired. And now he may still be feeling fatigue. This man is so remarkable. He rides a complete cycling season. He doesn't pick an event and go for it like some cyclists do. He rides a complete season, and he's still the world #1 for consistency as well.
Absolutely, but there are not many bike riders like Laurent Jalabert around anymore, and I consistently are reminded when I look at the way that Laurent Jalabert races, the way that he rides, I always think about Sean Kelly, because he was a great man with a career spanning more than 15 years, and Kelly would take every bike race as one to win, whether it be a small race like the Grand Prix of Antibes or whether it be Liege Bastogne Liege. He wanted to win it, and that's the kind of man that Laurent Jalabert is as well.
Well, there's Dario Frigo trying to tag on with some rich company here today. Casagrande 121. Bettini, not a big winner, usually a worker, but he's got in the break at the moment.
This is a serious move. This is the kind of move that does have the chance to build up on its advantage. But over the last couple of years, we've actually seen the move going over the top of the Côte de la Redoute and it all coming back together. In fact, if you look down the road there are still an awful lot of bike riders actually in with a chance. There's a group here now of around about 20 men trying to pull themselves back in. Andries Kloden is the telecom rider at the back, the man who this year was a big revelation to the European cycling world, because he was the winner of Paris-Nice.
What a good winner he was too. He's become pretty hot property now, along with his two more famous telecom mates, Erik Zabel and Jan Ullrich. Ullrich still fighting the flab and not around at the moment.
Well, I'm a bit surprised about Jan Ullrich, Phil, because earlier in the season I went to see a race in South Africa, the Vodacom Report Tour, and he actually didn't look that bad at all. He was riding very well, he was working for the team, leading out the sprints for his teammates, and rode a pretty reasonable time trial, finishing 6th in the time trial there over around about 16 kilometres. But it seems after he went back to Germany from the South African race that he then started to put weight on.
He has this problem with eating, and he seems to have a great affinity with it. This is Bettini now. We're heading on to the small climb of the Côte de Sprimont. Rebellin passing through. There's Jalabert. His face never ever tells you how he's feeling.
He never shows any emotion at all. He's a real tough bike rider. But that's the end of that breakaway for the moment. That group has come back from behind. They obviously are not going to let four big names like that get off the front of the bike race with 30 kilometres to go. Davide Rebellin riding for the Liquigas team here, wearing number 161 there. Getting a drink, keeping himself topped up with plenty of energy at the moment. A lot of these guys using these real high energy drinks. The counter-attack comes from the champion of Holland, Martin Den Bakker. No response from Francesco Casagrande.
No, you could hear the riders shouting, as they so often do when a rider attacks from midway down. Nobody bothered. Now, can Martin do something about getting himself onto the Sprimont and perhaps a little bit of a lead up there?
It looked like there was a Mappe rider trying to come out of the group as well, and I thought I caught the long lanky figure of Axel Merckx trying to make the junction, trying to be the one to respond. Obviously Mappe, regarded as the number one team in the world, they are the number one team on points, certainly cannot let a move go off the front like this. But in fact Den Bakker has caught out the race referees there, because he almost got right on the back of the car, the red car there. There is a reaction. Two riders coming across to the man at the front, and a fourth rider as well, a rider from the Lampre squad. That looks as if it is Axel Merckx in second position, and a rider from Once. It'll be difficult to see who that is until we get down just a little bit closer. Four riders now going off in the counter-attack, and this is the kind of move, Phil, that is possibly going to succeed, because there was a very hard attack there on the Côte de la Redoute, and everybody chased hard to come back together. There'll be a lull in the action, so the advantage might go to these four attackers now.
Well, let's see if it can. There we have big Axel Merckx. Felt so sorry for him when he got caught on the climb of the Wall of Huy in Flèche Wallonne the other day. Now Den Bakker, who was also part of the moves there, had a great spring last year, and apart from his second place in the Flèche, he got third in this race. David Echeverria, another man that's developing so well since he turned professional when he was the road race champion of Spain as an amateur.
Well, impressive to note, in fact, that Sevgenia Spruk is in that leading group as well. Now they've almost been pulled right back again, and the attack once again going from Faso Bortolo. Certainly a very aggressive team has come here, and you can see, in fact, that moving in there as well, the telecom rider Alexander Vinokurov.
Vladimir Obelli. This is going to be a very impressive team this year, I think. They've got some good names and clearly no shortage of money. We had a lot of camera time for Raimundus Rumsas, who's also riding this race today after his long breakaway in the Flèche. Haven't seen hide nor heard of him today.
David Echeverria coming across once again. He's playing the defensive role for Laurent Jalabert, but a defensive role that could actually turn into his favour if he's able to jump into one of these little breakaway situations and sit back, because we saw him win a very good stage at the Tour de France last year at the top of a long climb to the finish, a 2-kilometre climb, and he certainly has got the explosive nature to come out of the pack and win this bike race if he gets into the breakaway. This is the climb. It's not really much of a climb on the way back. It's just 9%, around about 1 kilometre long. And there are three riders now, Phil, starting to move off the front.
Looks as though Echeverria doesn't want to go forward. He's gone up there, but he doesn't want to press home the attack. He's waiting to see where Jalabert is positioned.
I think today the rule number one in the Once squad is it's all for Laurent Jalabert. He's never actually won Liege Bastogne Liege, although on many occasions he's come very close to doing it. But this is a man they need to be very careful of. This is Vladimir Obelli. He's a rider who is an excellent climber, and he's leapt across the gap there. Coming across now, the man who's really the replacement on this team for Michele Bartoli, and he was a man who was very important in the win of Michele Bartoli in Liege Bastogne Liege a couple of years ago. Paolo Bettini, he actually put in an incredible attack on the penultimate climb of the day, the Côte de Sartillemont, and it was then that Michele Bartoli countered that move over the summit and went on to his lone victory.
Well, it is Bettini who's come across, but it's not Jalabert who's come across, as our caption said there. This is David Echevarria who's joined the leaders. I think in Belgium, anybody that rides for Oncé, the name must be Jalabert.
Well, they better get used to the name Echevarria. In fact, they've corrected it now, because Echevarria is a very good bike rider. He's a very popular bike rider in Spain as well, and taking 2 victories for the Oncé squad at the Tour de France last year was no mean feat. He certainly became a major star overnight with those 2 wins.
So plenty to race for now. Over the top of the Côte de Sprimont, 2 climbs to come. Sitting there now at the back and not looking so happy, Andrea Taffi. But when Andreas hits to the back, it means he hasn't got much left, because he's given his all. That's how he rides a bike.
Absolutely. The US Postal rider there, 3 or 4 from the back on the right-hand side, is the Luxembourg rider on the squad, Benoit Joachim. A very good bike rider, a man who rode very well last year at the Tour de France. A man who will certainly be a great asset for the squad later on in the season. 153 is Serge Baguet, one of the French-speaking riders on the Lotto squad. But this breakaway group now, Phil, is looking very urgent indeed. They've certainly picked up the pace, and Paolo Bettini now will be quite happy to be in a situation like this, because he will be giving himself the advantage of being the team leader, and he's talking to the rest of the group. Come on, everybody work together, because this is a nice situation here. Well,
Echevarria, little demon he is. I met him when his first year pro in Australia. We rode a lot together, in fact, but he doesn't speak any language, only Spanish, so it was a little bit difficult. But Neil Stevens, who's now retired, was our interpreter on the bike, and he said at the time, Neil said that this rider had great potential, and although he has the build of a sprinter, he's turning out to be a real good rider, not just a sprinter.
27 kilometres left to go, and the next climb of the day will be the Côte de Sartillemont. It's a very long climb, around about 3 kilometres, and once they get to the summit of there, they actually plunge down on a huge wide boulevard into the outskirts of Liège. And in fact, there's a lot of gesticulating going on here, Phil, and what they're trying to do is get Echevarria to work with this group. 2 of the Italians, Bettini and Belli, came back and spoke to him to try and encourage him to move forward, but he won't move, Phil, because he is thinking only about one thing, and that's Jalabert.
He is, and he's constantly talking on his little radio there to find out what's going on back here. There's Jalabert, just passed through, riding about 10 men from the front just now. The Rabobanks are gaining forces here. It's not far to the breakaway anyway.
Quick glimpse in that group as well, Christian van der Velde, which is interesting to know, because van der Velde, a man from the track, we're seeing him now starting to ride very well, and a lot of these hillier races, he's certainly now starting to develop into a pretty serious bike rider. He came from the American track squad and now is building himself into being a very strong road rider, and I think we're going to see a lot more of Christian over the next few years.
Axel Merckx here, Mauro Gianetti in front of him. I thought we were going to the leaders, but in fact this is the chase group here, and so we're still waiting to get up to the leaders. That looks like Oscar Kamazin, the ex-world champion, and the Deutsche Telekom rider is Alexander Vinokurov. So this is a very nice, strong move, if he can get anywhere, but they're only just in front of the bunch.
Well, Axel's not going to move there. You noticed Axel Merckx swinging off and not moving to the front there. There's confirmation of that group. But Axel won't work in this group, Phil, because he's got Paolo Bettini in the front. And again, you see the power of the Mapei squad. When they come to the end of these bike races, they have power in numbers, and that really is the way to win, because you can always sit on a breakaway like this if you've got a man in front, and that is actually really leaning over now to the advantage of Axel Merckx in this chasing group of 5.
Peering down through the trees to see whether we're coming to the peloton. Yes, we are. As they go through the twists now, heading towards the next climb, the Côte du Sartillemont.
Dropping off the plateau that used to be the run-in of Liege Bastogne Liege. They take a left-hand turn at the top, which we just saw, and then they drop down into the valley. A little ride along the valley road, and then this penultimate climb of the day, the Côte de Sartillemont. A very difficult climb indeed, but you can see now, Phil, that this race has actually been split to pieces, and I think that group there with Axel Merckx must have been brought into the fold, because we just had the 4 leaders with a 27-second advantage over the main field, with all of the great challengers in there as well. And they won't get much help from the man in 4th position there, David Echavarria, because he will have the rules, he will know, and he will be in communication with his team manager Carlos Sainz, who will tell him, in fact, he has to sit there and not contribute at all to this breakaway.
So he's not going to be very popular for those tactics, but with less than 15 miles to go, this race far from decided here, because this climb at the end now, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, that is a real toughie, you know, and the riders know that once over the top of it, they're about a kilometre and a half from the line.
It is such a difficult climb as well, though. Echavarria sitting on the back there. Now this will actually discourage the riders in this leading group of 4 now, because Echavarria is the kind of rider you don't really want to drag to the finish line. This is Belli now, wearing 31 of the Fassa Bortolo team, a very good climber himself. Bettini, a former great domestique for Michele Bartoli, today turning himself into a leader of the bike race, and the man who is regarded probably as the best rider in this leading group of 4 there, Davide Rebellin. Rebellin, wearing number 161 there, is obviously exceptionally happy to be in this move. He realises there are just 2 climbs to go on the run up to the finish, and behind is Evgenia Spruk is trying to pick up the place. There's Christian van der Velde. Great to see him riding so close to the front.
Well, he's going to be a man that Lance Armstrong will treasure to have around in the upcoming Tour de France.
There's Michael Boga, the Rabobank rider. Here's Axel Merckx. A lot of sitting up now going on in this group here, Phil. Peter Farazijn, Laurent Dufaux, Dimbaka there. There's Jalabert. Jalabert seems pretty happy to be where he is at the moment. Kamazin coming through now. And then just on the back there, the Telecom riders was Vinokurov. And the young man at the back there was, I think, rider from the Lotto squad. Looked very much to me like the shape of Mario Arts.
I think that was the 20 kilometres to go sign we've just flashed past there. So they've got to make a decision soon, but they know there are still 2 small climbs still to come. This is the lead group. Bettini in 3rd wheel, Belli, and setting the pace is David Rebellin, and sitting at the back the Once rider Echevarria, winner of the Tour de l'Avenir a couple of years ago, which is a race of the future, and that was a great win for him.
He's a tiny little bike rider, isn't he? Sat very low down, and he does look much more like a sprinter. And as you said, Phil, he gets himself over the climbs very well indeed, which is why he's been able to give himself 2 great stage victories at the Tour de France. Today he's riding as the perfect domestique. He's riding to orders, because he knows in that group behind, Laurent Jalabert has certainly got to be the most powerful sprinter when it comes to the end of these big long bike races. Today's bike race is 268 kilometres. Their advantage is going up, though. It's up to 43 seconds at the moment as they come into the town now. Very shortly, Phil, they will be on the slopes of this very difficult climb of the Côte de Sartillemont. Another climb that was actually brought into Liege Bastogne Liege only a few years ago with the addition of that Côte de Saint-Nicolas to toughen up the run-in into Liege, which I don't really think they needed to make it very much tougher than they have done, but certainly it puts a serious sting in the tail of this very old race.
5.3% is the average of the climb, but this isn't really the one that's going to decide the race today unless it brings these 4 back into the fold. But the fact that there are so many cars behind right now, that isn't going to be the case. Back to Martin Den Bakker, trying to shake away a gain from the field. He never gives up, this man. I think every time he thinks about the weekend last year, well, it's not the weekend anymore, but the Flèche Wallonne and Liege Bastogne Liege, it just inspires him to attack again.
Absolutely. These are the bike races that suit him in a really big way. But you know, at the front of the bike race, Paolo Bettioli will certainly know all about this climb, because this is the climb where he really set up the win for his teammate Michele Bartoli a couple of years ago. He is a great bike rider himself, and he may well be thinking of trying to attack on this climb as well, although his attack on that instance was not really a great one, but it was just enough to shake the group around a little bit to allow Michele Bartoli to attack over the top.
A little reaction there coming from Telecom. Not a big one. That was Vinokurov. Here he is again. He's coming up. Now this is a strong man who's waiting for the big win. He's always in the front action of the results, that's for sure. If he can just get up with Den Bakker, might be something going on here.
Tell you what, the Telecom team certainly has beefed up its squad over this winter months. They've had some pretty serious transfers coming into it, and it's the kind of team that is going to get stronger and stronger as the season goes on. This man will certainly be a big help, I think, for Jan Ullrich at the Tour de France, and be careful, because he may well be the man. If Ullrich fades and has a bad year at the Tour de France, this man could find himself climbing up into the top 3 places, because he's a very good climber. He won the Dauphiné Libéré a couple of years ago, and actually is turning out to be a real hope for the future. He's joined Martin Den Bakker there. Now Axel Merckx has leapt out of the group, Phil, and Axel Merckx has gone around the corner himself in hot pursuit of the other riders up the road. 4 riders in the lead, chased by 2, chased by Axel Merckx.
Sounds like a little bit of aggravation here from the following cars. Might be our motorbikes in the way, but we're getting the shots as we see here. The group, there's the Mapei car, wants to get through, of course, and wants to get up and speak with Bettini, no doubt, and tell him the race situation. He's got through there with a great deal of skill.
Axel Merckx has moved up into the counter-attack, and very shortly the team management will be right up alongside him. There's Mario Arts, the rider from the Lotto squad. A big shout coming to Axel Merckx here. Merckx accelerating past Mario Arts. He now is, surprisingly enough, trying to attack when he's got a teammate off the road. I think he's been told to stop.
I think he has. That's what the car wanted, to stop him countering the attack, because he's bringing the whole field up here. And Jalabert is also close in the action. Won't be happy with those tactics, but that's the way it is. He's got his man playing the tactic up front, and now is trying to get up to him. It's the reverse of what Merckx is trying to do with Bettini.
He's a strong bike rider, Laurent Jalabert, though. He doesn't ask anybody for any help at all. Once he's decided what he wants to do in a bike race, he just goes out and dictates the pacemaking. He's not going to be too happy with having Axel sitting there looking over his shoulder to see if they've got a lead over the rest of the group, and they have, but they're not going too far without Francesco Casagrande. Casagrande realising the danger of allowing a man like Laurent Jalabert to go clear. This is a very difficult climb, Phil, when you bear in mind that we've been out on the road for 250 kilometres and there are 14 kilometres to go. This is Sergio Passani, the man sitting in the passenger seat here of the Mapei team car, a winner of a stage of the Tour de France when he used to ride for the great Bianchi squad. It's amazing that the number of people they have involved in the Mapei team. They have 39 bike riders, they have 5 team managers, 4 doctors. It's actually a huge business.
Absolutely, and for anybody that gets on that team as a youngster, they don't just burn you out by putting you in the top events. They don't expect results in the first year or two. They want you for a long time to come.
Talking to Massimo Testa, the team manager, the doctor I should say, for the Mapei squad, he was saying that he felt that Charlie Wagelis was one of the young riders on the development squad who had a very good chance of going forward to being a good bike rider in the next couple of years. He's got the right mentality and certainly got the right physical attributes.
Now all the shouts and the cheers coming from the people now as we watch Nicky Aebersold here from Rabobank, followed by Axel Merckx, Laurent Jalabert, I think it's Dario Frigo again, and these riders are trying desperately now to haul back that breakaway, which is not yet running away out of control.
It's actually a very small group. The group has been reduced quite a lot there, but their gap has gone up, Phil. It's 1 minute now to the leading group of 4 riders, so they're going to have to organise a pretty serious chase behind, and poor old Jalabert, he's got one of his best men in the leading group of 4, so he's not going to have too many men in this group with him to be able to chase, so he's going to really have to count, I think, on the team of Vinny Caldarello, the team of Francesco Casagrande, to come to the front and organise themselves. And there are in this group, as you can see, another 2 riders there from the Rabobank squad as well, so they too are a team which need to organise themselves, and I think they'll wait till they crest the climb.
This has been a tough last 50 kilometres for the riders here now. This group is getting small, strongmen are surviving. Everybody is working now, although they're in the pack, they're all working quietly away here just to either hang on or attempt to split this field up even more.
Andreas Klodem, the Telecom rider, sitting very much to the back of the group there, as is Alexander Vinokurov now, who's been picked up and he's back in the fold. This is a very large group, but as you can see at the moment, Phil, they're just riding to survive, to keep themselves together, with most of the work being done on the front by Nicky Aebersold, the Rabobank rider in the orange and white strip there. I do think, though, that the team of Francesco Casagrande will organise themselves over the summit of this climb, because Francesco Casagrande must feel pretty confident that he's got the ability to leap out of the pack on that final climb of the day, the Côte de Saint-Nicolas. The leading 4 now have crested the Côte de Sartillemont. They've got a very long, fast run into the outskirts of Liège, where they'll be touching speeds of around about 80 kilometres an hour before they go through the little Italian quarter of town, and then they've got that real climb, the unbelievable ascent of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, where you've got to have superpower and an awful lot of energy left just to drag your body up it.
Oh, absolutely. That's Rebel in number 161. Vladimir Obeli back to the chase group now, which has swollen up to quite a size. Still not giving up.
Axel Merckx is doing a great job there, though, Phil. He's always riding very close to the front, sitting on the wheel of the Vinny Calderillo man in the front position there. He's the man who's trying to pull it all back together for his leader, Francesco Casagrande. The man in first place is Mauro Gianetti. He's just got to keep riding and try and make sure that leading group of four don't get too far up the road. And there, right to the front of the pack, is Christian van der Velde. It's amazing to see him riding so well in this race, Liege Bastogne Liege.
No, good for him, because this is a tough race, Liege Bastogne Liege, especially if you're going to survive to the end. 264 kilometres. They've nudged out 9 more seconds. And I must say, looking at Eddie Merckx, listen to me, looking at Axel Merckx down there, Paul, he's recovered so well from that tough ride he had in the flesh.
Absolutely, he's a great bike rider. 201 there is Marco Velo, a great name for a bike rider. The attack now coming from Martin ten Bakker. There are 3 riders in this group from the Rabobank squad, so instead of trying to attack one at a time as Martin ten Bakker was doing there, what they really need to do is try and organise themselves at the front of this group. And in fact, there are a lot more. In fact, there are 5 riders here, Phil, from Rabobank, so they need to go to the front and organise the chase, because now is the only time on the course when you can actually hope to pull those 4 riders back into the fold. Actually, another man in this group as well is Laurent Dufaux, the climber from the Seiko Cannondale squad.
Another man trying to fight his way back into the big time, part of that disastrous Festina team that was slung out of the Tour de France a couple of years ago. There is Jalabert. He's tried a little bit today, a lot more than he certainly tried in the Flesh Wallon, but it hasn't worked out for him yet. And we've got his man up there, David Echebarria, who wants to see Laurent Jalabert up there, but at the end of the day, if they stay away, he's going to have to try and win the stage or win the Classic in this case.
I have to say, El Jaja has been really caught, I think, bad because of his own tactics. He sent a man off up the road now, and he's in a position where he can't actually chase behind. There are still plenty of riders, though, who feel that they can get off the front of this main field. And again, Martin ten Bakker, the rider there from Rabobank, the champion of Holland, he's trying to get clear. But it is so very difficult on this very fast running, because look at the speed there, Phil. 80 kilometres an hour, that's 50 miles an hour on this descent, as the leading 4 now are really very much in the outskirts of this very industrial city of Liège.
10 kilometres to the finish, and we run down into Liège, which is in a valley here, surrounded by hills. If you ever come to stay in Liège, every road out is up, but there are some beautiful roads away from this wonderful city. It's a sporting capital here, Liège, and now the return of its classic is in town. But this time, rather than finish in Liège now, we have to go over the river, and we start the climb of the Côte de Saint-Nicolas.
Alexander Vinokurov has joined Martin ten Bakker, and they are hoping that they can eat into the advantage, but I don't think this is the right way to try and pull back that leading group. It's a bit crazy by Rabobank. They've got so many riders in that group behind, Phil, that they should really try and organise the chase. That's the football ground of FC Liège, one of the Belgian First Division teams, and a team that plays all over Europe throughout the winter football season. But today we're not looking at football, we're looking at this, the toughest of all of the classics, the oldest of all of the classics, Liege Bastogne Liege. 9 kilometres to go, around about 3 kilometres to go now to the bottom of that final climb of the day, and I think it's almost masochistic of the organisers to put it in.
Well, it's a tough race, and they're going to make it tougher. These 4 riders are not safe and home and dry yet. Paolo Bettini, the best placed of them perhaps in performance, he was 5th in this race last year, so he knows what it's like to get to the end. David Echebarria, he will be the feared sprinter of the group, I would think. But you never know. David Rebellin always set for a surprise. Another man who's searching for the one big win to make him truly a big name. He wore the pink jersey in the Giro d'Italia a couple of years ago for 10 days, but didn't go on to win the race.
That's Mauro Gianetti on the front. Axel Merckx, what a great bike ride. Oops, a little bit of a quack there. That's what they call it in Belgium, when the rider in front of you moves out of the way a little bit, causing a wave in the main field. The Belgian riders call that a quack. It's not the famous Belgian quack beer either. It's a little manoeuvre which can be very, very dangerous, and if you ever go and race in Belgium, you have to learn very quickly how to avoid the quacks.
Well, these two are slowly pulling back the two in front. I don't know where they are in relationship to the main field, but I don't think very far ahead. But otherwise, if they are clear of the field, then Merckx is getting a free trip up here to the summit, and that will do him very, very nicely indeed. This is Gianetti who's with him, and he's got all reason to make the attack because he's got no teammates up there. Mauro Gianetti.
Well, that's amazing, because Axel Merckx here was actually just riding on the back of Mauro Gianetti, who just a few moments ago was setting the tempo on the front for his teammate Francesco Casagrande, and again the elastic must have snapped. So now there are 4 chasers chasing the 4 riders in front. The main field is not too far behind, but that is rather surprising that Merckx was able to get off the front, working as he was for his teammate in the front group of 4, Paolo Bettini.
Well, I don't know where the others went to, but they certainly disappeared quickly as they came across to Liège here. There's the Italian flag flying in the streets of Belgium.
Well, this little part of Liège here is known very much as Little Italy. After the war, a lot of Italian miners came up here to work in this part of the world, a lot of Italian steel workers as well, and they remained here, and there still is a very high Italian contingent living here in the streets of Liège, which is why this final climb of the day is amazing when you see the number of Italian flags along the side of the road. David Rebellin looking very comfortably at the back of the wheel of Paolo Bettini, and it's a bit strange for Paolo Bettini now, Phil, because he spends most of his career actually working for riders like Michele Bartoli, and now he's going to have the responsibility of team leader for the Mapei squad on his shoulders, and then with such a big team and such a big responsibility, you can end up making a very silly mistake. Rebellin is the calmest rider in the group. He knows how to win big classics. He's won the San Sebastian Classic before. He certainly is the man who should be looking for victory here at the end of this race.
Well, we're going to know very, very shortly now. They're about to start the climb of the San Nicolas. The World Cup holder, Eric Zabel, started today, but he hasn't been seen all day. Don't know where he is. He may have packed it in. But his first 3 World Cup events, with a first, second and third, or the first, third and fourth rather, they are the results you look for to be World Cup. So I don't think he would have expected to score any points today, but at least he came out as the World Cup leader in what is the 4th round of the World Cup. The 5th round is Amstel Gold, of course. That takes us to the early break before it resumes after the Tour de France.
Well, this now is the Côte de Saint-Nicolas, and in fact it looks as if Vladimiro Belli is in difficulty there. Phil, he's dropping off the back, and that's a bit of a surprise because he's a very good climber, a rider who formerly raced on the Festina squad, and he can't take the paces. We hit the 12% gradient here, and the 3 riders now at the front being subjected to the pace of David Rebellin. This is such a difficult climb. It's a real question of survival. I think it's all over for Belli because he just cannot stay on the wheel of the 3 in front.
Well, again, little David Echeverria keeps looking over his shoulder. I think he's going to have to realise he is the leader of Oncé right now, and here's the one who's going to have to win it for the team, because I don't think anybody's coming back up.
Well, absolutely. If they want to win this bike race, Phil, they're certainly going to have to get rid of him. David Echeverria is the fastest man in this leading group of 3 riders now. He's really having to dig deep because the accelerations are certainly going to come as we get a little closer to the summit, and the acceleration now coming from David Rebellin, and Echeverria very comfortably able to respond, and Paolo Bettini just hanging on to the back in 3rd place there. Bettini is a little bit put under pressure here, I think, Phil. He's rolling his shoulders just a little bit because of this very savage acceleration. 1 minute 16 back to the group of Axel Merckx, Vinokurov, Denbacher and Gianetti.
So it did open up, and largely due to the work of Rebellin. 5 kilometres still to go. A lot of it is uphill. These 3 riders are clear. Bettini is having his best season for a long time. He's had a great start to the year, winning overall the Settimania Cycling Week. And this is the 2nd group now, with Axel Merckx sitting at the back of it just for the moment at least. Vinokurov is up there, looking a little bit heavy for the time of the year, I think.
It's strange to see that move by Mauro Gianetti, which was in theory a move to try and pace his teammate Francesco Casagrande towards the front of this bike race, and he's actually forced a split. And Axel Merckx, I think, pretty happy to be there. David Rebellin has set all of the pace on the climb there, Phil, and certainly not managed to split. But look at this, the attack from Axel.
Well, Merckx has gone, and if he's got ambition, he's got to go exactly where he's gone, because he's just about left himself enough time, possibly to bridge the gap if those long, lanky legs have got any speed left at all. He has gone clear of that group, and I don't think there's been a reaction from the group.
What a great bike rider. It's great to see Axel riding so well. I always think about the pleasure that Eddie Merckx must get when he looks at Axel racing like this. He's attacked them. He actually has worked like a real good domestique here. He sat on the move, he allowed them to go forward, and he waited until the right moment, and he's launched the counter-attack.
Well,
David Rebellin has actually been put into difficulty now.
It looks as though we're watching Merckx. We've missed the attack here. It says fire. Oh, overshot the bend. Well, that was bad luck. But, you know, they always make that mistake, and David Echeverria didn't. But Bettini came round there so quick he went straight on, and that put paid to that move.
Well, actually, that surprised me as well, Phil, because I've done this run in several times into the finish here at Liege Bastogne Liege, and that certainly seems to be a corner that's been put in to change the run into the finish, because most of the riders actually ride this last 10 or 15 kilometres, and I think it's a bit surprising to see them getting caught out like that. But I think David Rebellin there breathed a sigh of relief.
Yes, he won't be complaining when they get to the finish. On the top inset there, that is Merckx, still clear. No time checks on him, but he is going quicker than these three right now. He's just over a minute behind when he started his move. Paolo Bettini wants to know, are there any more turns like that coming up? Otherwise, I'm not going to attack.
Well, he will actually be getting the information from Sergio Parsani here that in fact Axel Merckx has come up from behind, because all of the team cars nowadays, Phil, in these one-day classics, they actually drive with the live race television coverage in the car, so they know exactly what is happening behind, and that will actually allow Paolo Bettini. Well, he could have gone to the back and sat on and said, I don't want to work because Axel's coming, but he's pretty keen. Maybe he doesn't want Axel to catch up.
Well, maybe not, because he hasn't won any big races, so maybe he's going to have a go for himself. Last year, 5th in this race and 4th in the Grand Prix of Zurich. A brilliant 7th place in the Giro d'Italia back in 1998. And that's about it. He's won some small races, but up until this season started, he's only ever won 6.
Well, David Echeverria must be feeling pretty confident now. He's got over that very difficult climb, the last climb of the day to Côte de Saint-Nicolas, and he is certainly the fastest man in this leading group. He has to now ride as the leader of the Once squad, and watch out for the counter-attacks, because there are 2 Italians in this leading group of 3, and certainly they will try and work the old 1-2 on him.
Well, it'd be nice to know just what progress Merckx is making right now, and I bet his dad would like to know the same thing. Waiting to get shots of Axel Merckx as we look down on the 3 pacemakers now. All back together again, and the odds might be favouring David Echeverria. 35 seconds, he's halved his deficit.
Well, that's amazing. It was over a minute at the bottom of the climb when he's halved it to 35 seconds, and Axel is absolutely flying here. And wouldn't that be a run for the books,
wonderful.
Phil? If Eddie Merckx and Axel Merckx could both put their names on the winners list of the Liege Bastogne Liege, and I don't think that has ever been done.
It's 16 years since Eddie Merckx won his last of 5 Liege Bastogne Liege. Always comes to this event. Paolo Bettini wants more action, saying, I haven't got it now. I can't do any more because Axel's coming up. I don't believe that.
Well, that's pretty smooth. He's very urgent. He's trying to encourage the other guys to ride at the front of the group here, but in fact he himself keeps insisting on going to the front. He wants to finish in the top 3 of this bike race, and he should really play the domestique and go to the back and sit there and force the others to do the work. Axel now on the very rough cobblestones on the outskirts of Liège here. He's absolutely flying along. Look at that face, the complete and utter mask. And you're right, Phil, this is a complete recuperation from his ride the other day in Flèche Wallonne.
He knows he's catching up. He's 100%, of course. But, you know, Bettini should play the big bluff here. Sit at the back and say, well, guys, you either work or you've got 2 of us to contend with because Axel's coming up. And he's not doing that. He's so anxious to get to the finish.
Well, he should really. He is now moving himself into second position and forcing the others, and he should really make the point of forcing Echeverria to do a lot more work, because Echeverria is the man who early on sat on this breakaway for a long time. Echeverria in the yellow jersey there is the strongest sprinter when it comes down to the end, and you can see now Bettini has decided to play that rule. He's decided, but this is bad because he's let Rebellin go.
Well, David Echeverria wouldn't counter the move, so Bettini had no choice in the end, but basically he is trying to sit on now and await the arrival of Axel, because this is Belgium, don't forget. This would be an incredibly popular win if Axel could get up, and what a way to win.
He's a tough little nut, that David Echeverria, because he wants to win the bike race, but he wasn't going to close the gap down on Rebellin because he knows that Paolo Bettini seriously wants to win, so he forced the Italian to close the gap. Now that is real poker face.
Well, I think that Rebelin will be the next guy to attack. In the far distance there, I think, in fact, I am sure, that is the small convoy behind the riders. Merckx can see his quarry now, and the crowd are urging him on. This is a classic chase, just like his dad used to do, and his dad always won.
Yeah, I don't think Axel's going to do that now, though, Phil, unless they really start messing around at the front, because that was the big 1 kilometre to go banner, and Axel was still more than 20 seconds in arrears. This is Vladimiro Belli now trying to pull himself into the bike race. You know, this is an unbelievable bike race we're looking at here. It may well all come together inside the last kilometre. There you can see pulling his way through the crowds is Vladimiro Belli wearing number 31. He is trying to pull himself up to another group in the road.
1 kilometre to go to the finish now. And there is David Rebelin, and he doesn't know what to do. Bettini's waiting for the arrival of his teammate. Echevarria is the sprinter and can't move.
Well, where's Belli come from? Belli's about to catch the leading
Belli's
group
right
of 3
there.
riders. We never got any information on him at all, and all of a sudden he's the one who leaps out of the pack, and he's very rapidly going to join them. Axel is trying to get across, but he ain't going to make it.
I admit, Paul, I had totally forgotten about Vladimiro Belli that was dropped from that group. He's never been caught by Merckx. He is still riding in 4th place, and the cameras have absolutely ignored him because of the chase coming from the back by Axel Merckx. And now, well, they're going to mess around like this. Belli could be the surprise winner.
Well, he really is trying to, and if they start doing this tactical manoeuvring, he will come back, and there he is, and he's dragged himself back into the race. What a remarkable performance, but they're putting pressure now, Phil, on Echevarria. Echevarria in the yellow is having to sit on the front here, and Axel's actually closing it down.
He can now observe on the sprint. He's got that close, but Belli didn't get chance for second wind here because Rebelin is keeping the hammer pressed firmly down. Echevarria won't want to move, and he sees Merckx coming up now. Bettini is feeling now that he's got to wait, but has he got time? It's 11 seconds the gap.
Well, Phil, wouldn't this be magnificent for Spain? Because I can't remember that a Spaniard has ever won Liege Bastogne Liege. If you look back through the years, there's been great attempts by Miguel Indurain and other Spanish riders, but I don't think a Spaniard has ever got across the line in first place.
Absolutely right. A Spanish rider has never won Liege Bastogne Liege, and this one could be the day because David Echevarria is a good sprinter, and they're making Rebelin do all of the work, so that's writing him out the script.
There's Axel. He's around about 150, 200 metres behind. He's not going to make it, Phil, because shortly they will take the turning into the finishing straight, and they're still forcing. Echevarria is really riding like a true sprinter. He's riding in second position, right on the wheel of Rebelin, but on his tail is Bettini.
At 200 metres to go, David Rebelin is opening up the sprint, and he's taking David Echevarria towards the line. Almost a touch of wheels there by Bettini. It's going to be Bettini and Echevarria, and I think Bettini's got it. He has beaten Rebelin, who can't believe he's been beaten. What a result for Paolo Bettini. And here comes the race for 4th, and poor Axel Merckx almost snapped up Vladimir Belli, but he didn't get him. A superb 5th place for that man.
Great bike ride by Axel there coming up to the line, and here is the rest of the group making their way forward. This is Mauro Gianetti coming up to the line. He's done an awful lot of work, and Vinokurov, the rider from Telecom.
And the other man in this breakaway shed was Dembaka. He is going to survive to get a good place anyway. Look at this sprint again.
Absolutely remarkable. David Rebelin set the sprint alight in second position, an ideal position there for David Echevarria, and he was in an ideal position now to move forward. He waited just a little bit. Oh, there's almost a touch of wheels there by Paolo Bettini, but he's got the big gear in. He's rocking and rolling all over his machine, and he got the jump on everybody else, and that was the moment, Phil, when he put it into supercharge and took the win here at Liege Bastogne Liege. I don't think he really thought he was going to do it until the last possible moment when he actually went right across the line. But the Belgian television were in there very rapidly, Phil, to have a quick word with the winner and ask him just how he felt about winning one of the greatest bike racing classics. He said, I went after several attacks, but you know, when I got away with Belli and with Rebelin, I really felt that if we worked together, we had a great chance of getting off the front. It was a great occasion for me, and I was just hoping that we could stay clear.
I'm just wondering, Paul, what his friend will be thinking now, Michele Bartoli, who's won this race in the past, because he'll be delighted that he's won this race now. And there he is on the podium, and in fact we understand on a mobile phone he's telephoned Michele Bartoli, who sent his warmest congratulations. He also is delighted. Well, that was a superb result for him. Just look at this here. This is how he did it. Almost a touch of wheels there. In fact, he probably did touch as he started the sprint for the line. They'll still be coming in for a while yet, but this man, Eddy Merckx, telling Belgium here exactly what he thinks of his son, and he'll have very, very warm feelings. His son rode a classic race today. It almost worked. Hope you enjoyed it. We certainly did. Goodbye. Well, I hope you enjoyed yet another cycling video from World Cycling Productions as much as we've enjoyed bringing it to you. Now, what many of you probably don't know is that I'm also the international editor of Cycle Sport, a fully international magazine which brings you all of the up-to-date news in the cycling world. It brings you profiles and reports of the top bike races and also stories of the men that make the news. And it keeps you up to date too with the technical innovations in our sport. I think we produced the magazine using some of the world's best writers. I know we certainly have one of the world's best photographers in Graham Watson. If you love cycling, you should see this book, and here's how you go about getting a subscription. Subscribe to Cycle Sport and we'll send you a free WCP video. Just call the number listed or visit our website cyclesportmag.com for a complete listing of the free videos available and for other special offers too. Don't miss this chance. I'm sure you'll love the magazine, and I look forward to visiting you each month through my column.